Forest.
Yes, what a great way to start, eh?
Yes. I try and pick something that's calming. All right, PowerPoint. All right, so you should see something with my mouse just kind of moving over. Give me a head nod.
Yeah,
that's what you've got. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
I'm gonna have to make my group here a bit smaller. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You're good.
I'm good. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay. So once again, welcome to everyone. Basically, we've certainly been hearing a lot in the news about health and about issues in the health world. And so as a result, I think that this is a good tie in. When we're listening to what's going on in the world, we're listening to how upset employers are at finding employees and keeping employees and that sort of thing. And I certainly think that what we're going to show you today is a way to talk to them and help them improve things. I mean, happy, healthy workers actually equal a healthy business, and overall that gives them a positive environment, both from a workplace and also from their bottom line. Today I'm here as all of you know, from the Academy, and Gail, I'll let you tell people about yourself in case some of them might not know.
Sure. So obviously I'm a chartered financial divorce specialist. I do have the advanced accreditation. I'm a trainer and mentor in that program, and I guess a curriculum program developer with Linda in that new approach or new level. I'm also a collaborative team practitioner, also a trainer in that space, accredited mediator, certified money coach, and prior to working solely with those going through separation divorce, which is where my focus is now, I was in the financial service sector since about 1995 on the investment side of things. And with what we want to focus on today, although it'll be relatively short, and we may cover some of this quickly, is for you to understand why a worker's separation should matter to the employer, and learn what you, as the CFDS separation professional experts that you are, can do to help those employers, the working community. We want to go over some practical tools and systems that you can put into place for the businesses to promote ADR, alternate dispute resolution, also called CDR, consensual dispute resolution services. And Linda mentioned, you're not going to hear anything in terms of content that is new. This is all something we think most of you know and live likely every day. It's just that spin in how you might then present it to an employer, which in part should help widen the audience and the education and understanding of the work it is that we do, and in a way is business marketing for yourselves, ways to get referrals, ways to build your practice. That's the learning objectives or our focus for today. And when we talk about employers, we're talking about the business owner, the business leader, decision makers. They're going to want to be ahead of the divorce pandemic because it causes disruption in their businesses and bottom line. Since 2000, the numbers of those divorcing continue to increase, and Canada has one of the highest divorce rates. We're about 29th overall worldwide. We're behind Russia and the US and the Maldives, apparently. We know that stats do not give us necessarily good figures. You can't say, oh, this is exactly how many separations took place or how many divorces took place, because it doesn't often count the common law couple who are separating. So taking into account all the groups divorcing or separating, the trend is on that upward trajectory. The expectation is post-COVID, and I'd say that's where we are now, that the numbers will continue to jump higher. Many professionals are seeing in the 2021 timeframe, 2020, 2021, increasing caseloads. It's the employers that need to become more informed that there's a better way, that there is a way to have their employees, their workers, separate outside of court. Many of them don't even know that there are processes outside of court. We want to highlight for them the processes that are honest, respectful, cooperative, have clear language, that use the collaborative divorce or the family mediation methods of resolution. And that if they're using the collaborative process, the couple doesn't go to court. And in fact, if they did, that both those lawyers would be replaced with litigative lawyers. That's a point not understood by employers. And in family mediation, the couple works with a neutral facilitator to come to mutual agreement on financial and parenting issues. And that both of these processes have quality legal advice and advocacy built into them during their entire process. So that's something employers can get behind because it's a supportive process or a supportive method for their workers. So the senior workers, the managers, the key staff are vital to a business's success. And they're choosing more than ever to divorce, and that's a major impact on the environment for all workers. So the employers, the leaders, the business managers need to know the background, the framework, the demographic, that the ages of 50 to 59 are showing an increase, that 42% of marriages now last between 10 and 20 years, and the average length is 14. I mean, so they can kind of take a read of the room, so to speak, of is that where their workforce sits, or do they have a much, much younger workforce? And these statistics come from what's quoted here at the bottom of the screen. So the more details employers and HR department heads know, the better off they are. Not only do workers frequently experience depression during divorce, facts show that the average person stays depressed for approximately 4 years. So let that sink in. That's a long time to have a workforce or one employee or more than one employee in a depressed state. And how does that impact a business's productivity, customer service? Workers don't leave their emotions at home. Emotional stress comes into the workplace. North American business see a cost of divorce up to $6 billion annually. Stats Canada found that adults go into depression 3 times more often during a divorce. And those statistics come from this source. So just like daycares and school schedules impact their workforce, so does the separation and divorce situation. The changes in the Divorce Act in 2018 and 2021 are good steps to understanding the humanity of families during a separation. So employers are not necessarily aware that there's been changes. Things like taking custody out of the vocabulary and taking and reducing the idea that children are pawns to fight over and replacing the concept with working together for positive parenting. The language and concept are not understood by most employers or HR departments. Key points employers need to hear are Divorce Act updates, that abuse has been on the increase or on the rise during COVID-19. Abuse in all of its forms requires screening no matter what process is chosen. The Divorce Act now uses parenting for terminology and replacing the adversarial custody. And financial concerns still remain major issues, especially in inflationary times and with housing option shortages.
Hello. Hi.
Oh,
Could everybody
Hi.
mute?
Melanie is, I think, the one, if you can mute. There we go. Thank you. So think about how you can use these statistics to show employers, managers, the business owners in your communities, the impact that separation is having on their workforce, whether it be small business, medium size, or larger size with a union. Maybe we can, Linda, do you want to take a moment, or do you want me to just give the kind of a summary of the impacts?
Sure, you can give a summary of the impacts.
Okay. So the ones that we have seen when we've been doing research and making presentations and out in our own communities in kind of different, very different areas of Ontario between Linda and I, is decreased productivity. Workers are unable to focus on tasks. Increased worker turnover, which means more hiring, more training, and more new workers, which they're already having, in some cases, difficult times filling positions. Turnover is not something that an employer, a business owner wants. HR issues come up between coworkers. When someone's depressed or someone's not their emotional good self, then there's coworker problems, there's poor worker performance reviews. Some of this comes up in the performance reviews. So HR department managers having additional resources to be able to give back to their staff that they're doing reviews with is very helpful. We see increased benefits in plan usage, medication, counseling, for example. We see increased short-term and long-term disability. So people are off work. And that affects the bottom line. Increased personal time. So maybe they're not on a short or long-term disability, but they're taking frequent time off. Increased workplace safety. Injuries are increased because workers aren't able to focus. Linda, I'll toss it over to you.
Okay. So here's some of the things that, as I sort of mentioned at the beginning, that we want to inspire you to think about and for you to create your own sort of questions to build an action plan. So how do you think, and we'll have a little discussion about this today too, how do you think that you could go out there and assist employers or HR specialists to understand some of the things that Gail's just mentioned about the decreased productivity, about the fact that when they're dealing with their separation or divorce, they're not at work mentally, they're not there to focus. Would it be possible for you to help them understand that their turnover issues, as well as attracting people or having to retrain people because of turnover, could improve if they had better support systems for their employees? Do the HR people understand that there is a connection between those, unfortunately not positive performance reviews that they have to give to their workers because of something that's happening at home? And, other things that I think we're going to talk a little bit more about are how does that impact that benefit plan that they maybe have their workers using? Is this causing them, have they really looked at what's causing that short and long-term disability? And of course, there would be possibilities of much more time off of work. And last but not certainly least is the fact that, if you're not focused and you're not at your very best as a worker, then that's where potentially there's the, accidents or injuries that happen, which then are, it's not just hitting that health plan, it's also hitting them with WSIB and that sort of thing. So if you, at this moment, if anybody does have any thoughts, if you want to put those out there, feel free to either jump in or put something in the chat. If something doesn't come to mind immediately, think about it and we'll talk about it a little bit more at the end. But does anybody want to take a moment to anything that's made you think or something that you've already done? Okay, I don't see anything particular. Oh, Jennifer, maybe. Jennifer's saying, is there a package or brochure that's available to employees? At this moment in time, I don't believe so. I certainly think that perhaps we could look at that as a brainstorming thing as to being able to provide something like that, because I think that's a great suggestion, Jennifer. So we'll keep going. So next slide. So as far as the impact of divorce, certainly the employers quite often as a carrot are providing health care benefits. And this is not a small figure. And it's certainly, as we hear from them, a lot of times that number keeps on going up, and that's affecting their bottom line. So if you can catch their ear by saying, you know, there's a huge impact that are actually health related costs that are affecting your benefit plan, and that's actually connected to separation and divorce. It allows you to get ahead and to help those employees cope better. And again, a lot of times the problems are because of fear, because of it feeling chaotic, and because they don't feel like they've got the support. And certainly depending on their experience, if they wind up getting a lawyer that gives them just a bunch of legalese, they're going to feel more upset than they did before they even walked in sometimes. And so some of the factors that they found that are really making that link between separation and divorce from a disease perspective is there's an increase in diabetes, in heart attacks. They're seeing that there's a lower immunity for people. And certainly right now with everything that's been going on, immunity is top of mind. There are more serious accidents that can connect back to these situations at home, and there's higher alcoholism and other substance abuse. So pretty serious things. It's not just, you know, a slight, oh, I have a headache and I'm going home for the day. And if we go to the next slide, we'll look at, and most all of you would know that the stages of divorce and the stages of grief have that interaction. And I mean, I think there may be some employers and HR people that know this. I'm not sure that they realize the complexity though. So similar to death, absolutely, but much more complicated. If we look at these two lines, like the stages of grief to some degree do follow a fairly, you know, regular sort of thing. When we look at the crazy line that's going every which way, that's a little bit more like what's happening for people when they're going through separation and divorce. We know that in a lot of cases, there's rejection or there's guilt. Obviously, there's trust breakdown. I certainly would say in many cases, that's one of the reasons that people will dig their heels in and sometimes not provide us with the documents we need because they don't trust and they just are stuck. And then, of course, you have everybody and their dog that know them, family, friends, coworkers as well, talking about all the solutions that might be there for them. And obviously that's the worst advice that they could possibly get, as well as you're looking at, you know, a lot more disruption in the workplace when those coworkers are giving that advice. They're not talking about their job. They're not talking about what work they should be doing. If we look at the next slide. So when we see that phases of grief, the phases of divorce are not just those 5. You're also dealing with 2 more. So again, you know, it's more complicated. It's not, you can't see that, okay, if they get through, you know, the denial or they get through the anger, then they're going to go on to the next phase. That's not necessarily what's happening. You're also oftentimes getting a shock reaction because oftentimes the person who's told didn't know it was going to happen. Denial is much more so in this case than there would be in grief because, I mean, you may be at first in denial that you've lost someone, but in this case, it's denial of somebody you've lost but they're still there. So it's complex. And then the other thing that's pretty much a different category in a phase is the bargaining, which in order to get through all the phases, they have to do the bargaining. And if there's a broken trust or if they're unwell because of how they're reacting, this all makes it that much more complicated. So we'll keep going. And some of this I won't spend a whole lot of time, but I think the important thing is from the employer or the HR people, do they know who the right professionals are to go to for help? So I think one of the things that's really important for all of us to understand is that we live in this particular niche world dealing with people going through separation and divorce all the time. The business owners and the HR people are dealing with all of whatever their workplace is. And this isn't something that they necessarily would even understand or have any reason to have, experienced, so that they know who are those right people. Very key that it's settlement focused lawyers, whether, no matter which process people are going through, really important that those people are hitting the right lawyers, that they're not lawyers that are just going to bog them down and that sort of thing. You want them interested, and ideally it is a better situation if they are in the alternate dispute resolution world or the consent world. This is also a place where it's advantageous for both the employers and HR people to know that this exists, and also for you to highlight being a key person that can help them connect the dots with these people. And if we keep going. So I would certainly say one of the best kept secrets are all of us, right? People do know lawyers, whether they realize they're settlement focused or not. And this does allow us to identify where we fit and introduce ourselves to the business owners and HR people and that sort of thing. So explaining that we're a member of the academy, that you all have like solid credentials before you ever were able to take your Chartered Financial Divorce Specialist course, and that you have that kind of specialized experience, that the accountant who would be there for business and tax needs, or the business and pension valuator are there for the pension valuations. You have things to offer, and you can talk to these people and help the clients through this better by talking to people and them not being stuck with dealing with their accountant or the valuator misunderstanding any of it. In actual fact, understanding these things is so key, because they've also looked at that divorce is one of the leading causes of a loss of wealth, both personally and also the impact it has on business. And then in some cases, we're dealing with the business owner who is also the employee, so to speak, because it's their business and their world that's really important. And then if we look at our next slide, again, they may have a plan where they've had family professionals involved in like the role of therapist or psychologist. They haven't necessarily thought about them as a family coach or a child specialist. And again, one of the most stressful things that you can go through is separation and divorce. The other things are death, moving, a major illness, or job loss. So it's just as impactful. And so again, the best way to do that for anybody is to have that support so that they can work through the emotions, because it's pretty hard for them to actually hear what the lawyers are talking about or help us with the financial gathering of information or the helping them to understand things without having that piece in there. And if we look at all three together at the next slide, this divorce triangle is something that I think is a really useful tool for all of you to help them understand this is always the way it is. It doesn't matter whether, which reason it is that they're separating or divorcing, but this is always going to be involved. There's always emotions. There's always money, whether there's a family that is, just hanging on financially or whether there's affluence. All of these things are there every single time. And of course, in order to do things properly and not have something go wrong, you have the legal aspect. So it's important, and this might be a useful symbol to provide for the business owners or the HR people, for them to understand quite quickly that it's more to it than what they may have thought, and that being able to have these kind of opportunities available to them would make a huge difference. One of the things we keep hearing is that staff today is really hard to come by, really hard to keep. And it's really important that they can provide them things that will be attractive and help them stand out from other people. So then if you move to the next slide, what can the business do? So you're there to help them find that solution. You're there, being able to help them work on a program. So who offers the services that they're looking for? And you could assist them with building, programs that they can put in place, a policy that would be something that they would then, build into their existing policies and employees workbook. It's much more of an uncomfortable place if the employees are happy, and that all reflects on their bottom line. And so lunch and learn sessions could be a way to educate all the staff. You'd be starting with the HR people, of course, or the business owner. And so, it gives you that ability to explain to them what this is all about, explain to them that there is such a thing as, mediation and collaboration. So there's different things than what we always hear about as far as that goes. And that these are things that are out of court. So, there's some real advantages there, not to mention lower dollars for the staff and ultimately for the business. And then if we look at the next slide, I think this is part of what businesses do. If it's something that they don't quite understand, they will ignore it. So you don't want them to be that business, that you want to help them understand that what impact divorce has on their productivity. They want to be that proactive, that they're putting something in place. And again, do they know any of these facts that we've talked about? Do they realize what's going on? And do they understand that by not addressing it, not talking to the employees, that it's actually costing them money in their workplace? Building these policies can be impactful, and it would definitely show that they're a proactive business. And again, something you may want to explore with them would be, is there something that in flexible hours that would be helpful to the employees? I mean, people get grief time off, but there's no such thing as like time off when you're going through a separation or divorce. That's actually any kind of a set time. Maybe that's something that they could explore or might find useful. And if we keep going. So really, there are the employee assistance programs that do exist, and many of them may have like counseling services. Very few of them would have anything that would have our realm in there. Certainly that's nothing that's really focused in this area from what we've been able to glean. And so helping them understand that, maybe they need to expand their program. Maybe they need to look at organizations that do provide mediation and collaboration, that have a roster of names and that. Do they realize what CDR and ADR could do and how that would, assist them? And that these processes truly do support their employees. Did they ever consider having professionals that specialize in divorce and that can do things that can make this difficult time better for their employees and for their bottom line? And then if we look at the next slide, I think this is something that would appeal to a lot of employers. First of all, do they understand what the collaborative process is? What is a participation agreement? I think that one of the things that happens is 9 out of 10 times they think about ugly court battles, because that's what's out there in the media. That's what's out there as far as what people talk about. Very few people stop and say what a wonderful experience they had through their separation or divorce. We hear all the ugly stories for sure. So something like this, where there is done in a business format. So the fact that they're, treating it as like an agreement just before they even start, saying this is how we're going to behave respectfully, that there's a team of people. So again, did they realize that it's not just adversarial, that now you have a team to support you. You have chartered financial divorce specialists and family professionals involved, and everybody's agreeing they're not going to go to court, which saves time and money. So obviously for the client, it's saving time and money, but it's also saving time and money for the employer. If the employee is, upset about going to court or winds up going to court, that's a lot more time off and definitely not positive for them. And then if we look at family mediation, which a number of you also are mediators, do they understand how this fits? Do they realize that this is a neutral that can, conduct a business meeting, walk people through things in a respectful way again? And again, you're saving some dollars, and do they understand that? That the two lawyers are there for independent legal advice, but they may not attend all of the meetings. So again, there's money that you're saving. It assists them when you're using the mediation process that the children don't become pawns. And again, that makes the workplace a lot better when people are concerned about their kids or there's not the support that they need. This could be a problem. Do they, have they even heard of people that are having any kind of working out of a parenting plan and that sort of thing? And when they're working with the family professional, one of the keys, do they realize that they're going to have now their staff that are going to learn ways to cope and communicate with their ex, that they're going to look at how to cool off those buttons that they push for each other. If they learn ways to do that, again, learning how to cool off those hot buttons is a lot less complaining and time that's averted from work to make a lot of small talk in the office and sort of bother their coworkers, which may or may not really be happy to hear about that. As far as the parenting plan goes, again, it gives more stability in the workplace because now there's going to be an organized way to look at time that they need to do things with their children, as opposed to always having things happen and people flying by the seat of their pants or rushing out of the office or out of their the staff area because they've got to deal with their kids. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of lack of education in this area, which we can bring to the fore. And then, of course, again, as I said, helping them understand what is a true neutral. I mean, one of the key pieces is that we're always going to be the only person that's in that role for the finances, and the numbers are the numbers, and we're there to represent both clients no matter what. Certainly, we are a well-kept secret, and this does, as Gail had mentioned, provide you that opportunity to go out there and talk to other people maybe you hadn't considered, to spread the word and gain, clients, as well as helping families while you're at it. Most definitely what we provide is the education and demystifying things, which again calms down that staff person. Money is certainly one of the roots of the separation and divorce world, and certainly also causes a lot of stress. And anything that you can do to de-stress for the workers will make that difference. The fact that we can present the facts in a language that the clients can understand. They're not looking at a bunch of financial documents only and saying, I have no idea what this means, or looking at the legal documents saying, I have no idea what this means. And then if we go to our next slide. So again, for the employer, the employees are going to stress out as far as how does the money work going forward with the new position with two households to deal with. So we can provide that reality check. Do they know that? Do they understand what we bring to the table? That we can help their staff with the cash flow issues, that we can provide that assistance with the pros and cons for those financial choices. We can help them understand what the outcome could do to them if they're making a choice that's completely from their heart and not looking at the finances. By reducing that fear, we're empowering them. And again, that brings that calmness and more productive employee back into play. We can show them the tax issues or the tax benefits that they can make sure that they get, and look at any of the money issues from that projection perspective. And if we look at our next slide, which shows the projection, one of the projections, it helps them understand that we can deal with the engineer who wants to see all of the number crunching spreadsheets, but we could also, for other people that the numbers make them glaze over, we can show them that picture. And I would certainly encourage all of you to use the projections a lot, because it does help the clients. It does make you stand out. You've got this, nobody else has this opportunity, as well as the skill set, and it helps them much more so figure out how they're going to do things going forward. And we'll look at our triangle one more time, because again, this is a win-win with using these other processes, with using all of these key people, of which you are integral, is that it's a win-win for the workers. It's a win-win for the HR people that are dealing with their employees and co-workers, not to mention the business owner. So, you know, the clients are in the center, so the workers are in the center, and all of these professionals around them are supporting them and helping them understand. So helping you make them aware of what's key and how this can really help their business is what I would encourage you to do. And I mean, again, we have built in now the mentorship program. So for those people who have taken all the technical knowledge and are either uncomfortable in their new role, or are wanting to rejuvenate the skill sets that they do have, this allows you to identify as someone who has a higher standard, because it's not just the book learning that you've done, it's that practicum. So you're taking the knowledge that you've received and you're using it in real cases, whether it's from an observation perspective, a simulation perspective, or having that mentor there with you in your initial cases, or some of your tough cases perhaps. Without a doubt, having that hands-on skill set does make you more effective, de-stresses you, and certainly you'll have much more accolades going forward. So I would encourage anyone who hasn't done it to explore that. And then what I would certainly say is, like, we've been starting to put the word out there to build bigger awareness as well. We've reached out to OACP and OAFM so that they're aware of the mentorship program and of the people who we already have, who are CFDS-AA for that advanced accreditation. That this is a way that we can work with the HR people again, saying, you know, it's not just talk, we can actually do the work. And I would certainly say that you want to look at your communities. Every single one of you will have special high-risk groups in your communities that you can reach out to. We've listed a few here: people in the airline industry, medical, transportation, policing, and army. Think about, you know, everyone has medical people in, no matter what size community you'd be at. Think about, you know, is there a doctor, or is there an association, or did you talk to your doctor recently and maybe they would have a contact that would open a door for you to invite them to understand this process and how you can help. Certainly other high stress groups would be, or high places that would give you profile to talk to about such a thing. It are the unions, professional associations, any groups that offer benefits to their workers, anybody who's a government employee, because they would have benefits of some kind. So those are some seeds of ideas as to where you could start. And then I'm going to turn it back to Gail.
Okay. So what we've covered off is a shift in thinking, so you have a better understanding of why a worker separation should matter to an employer, and how you can approach employers or HR departments, those business owners. You've learned what, as a separation professional, you can do to help those employers with their bottom line, which obviously is one of the main reasons they're in the business, doing what it is that they do, and some of the practical tools and systems. And that's, I think, what we want to spend a little time talking about as a collective group, just some brainstorming of what you might do as next steps. These are references that we've used. If you want any connection to those, we can provide them to you at easy enough. And the awareness is key here, to provide the resources to make it easy to work with developing the supports needed. So the comment about a package, that's definitely something that we should spend a few minutes time talking about, and looking at ways to make a real difference to a larger group in your community. So realistically, what can you do tomorrow? And we know that this, we don't mean tomorrow as in the day after this one, but next week, for example, to put in place building your practice to include those owners, HR department heads, managers. What are the practical approaches you've taken? We'd like to hear from you to share in that way. And Linda and I thank you for taking some time, and well, thank you in advance for sharing your questions and comments, because as a community, we need to build up the understanding of the space we work in, that it is an alternate dispute resolution space. It does have designated professionals, and one of the ones that we need to talk louder about, talk at the top of our voices, is the designations that we have as chartered financial divorce specialists. And you should, oops, back one. This is the contact for Linda, which I know you have. That's my contact information, which you can reach out to me as well. So at this point, I'll stop screen sharing and open it up to any comments, questions, anything that anybody wants to add in.
And don't be shy.
Yes, please don't be shy. We're a small group. We can have kind of the more social, I won't say cocktail hour because it's not even 2 o'clock where I am, but it might be cocktail hour where you are, but more of the coffee chat kind of approach.
I just found it very helpful to be thinking of it in this mindset towards employers. I can think of several different circumstances now already, just looking at it from a different standpoint and how unproductive and difficult it can be on everyone. So I found it excellent, well done, and also love the idea of being able to spread the word and get that out there. So
Good,
Sure.
thank you.
And Jennifer, I like your idea. I don't know if a small group of people might want to work on a brochure or something that then we could circulate to everybody. I just always find it's better to have more brains than one. I know Gail and I definitely bounced ideas off of each other and worked on this together. So if people would be interested, just, send us an email, and then, maybe we'll do that and we can follow it up. Maybe we can have a plan of having it done before the year end or something.
Is there anyone within this group who has reached out to an employer, a small business owner, an HR department, a union, doctor's office, because obviously doctors see a lot of people, or a therapist group? No? Okay, so this is obviously, and I'm assuming the people who are off mic are really there behind your name, and that you haven't either, since I can't see you nodding or shaking your head. So this is an untapped source. Eva, go ahead.
Eva?
I recall a few years ago that the Collaborative Practice Toronto group was at a presentation, and again, I apologize, but the Association of Psychologists or something like that. And I think there was, we had a booth and so on. And then I think I actually spoke a little bit about just what the Collaborative Practice group was all about and so on. And I think everybody was very disappointed that there wasn't any more feedback and more sort of reaction from this group. So sometimes, and I don't know what the issue is, if we think that these groups are obvious in looking for help, maybe they're not. Maybe they're just so focused on their own work that they're just not used to referring to anybody else. I mean, we didn't have sort of a discussion afterwards of it working or not working. And it may have just been that they were so focused on the reason that they were there and the presentations that their own members were doing, that this was sort of like an extra offshoot. So it's not just presenting, let's say, at a meeting or at a conference or something like that. But I don't know. I think in my experience in trying to present to other groups, not necessarily employers, but I know I've spoken to other financial advisors, certainly real estate agents. I've done a lot of presentations to them, and you think, okay, there's the perfect natural referral group. They listen politely, but I don't know, something just doesn't stick in their head. So I think there's a disconnect between obvious groups that we think are obvious referral sources and people that should be caring about their, whether employees or their clients. And when it comes to separation and divorce, again, is it something that's not talked about as much as we assume that it's talked about?
Yeah, I think part of it for me in reaching out to community is I always try and sit in the place of whatever my audience is. So what, and I'm straightforward and what's in it for me. So if I have a client who can give me the name of their HR department or even do an email introduction or something of that nature, then I want to do my intro email that I'm looking to spin it or present it in a manner that says, you know, are you struggling with employee retention? Do you have you considered the cost of separation and divorce in the following ways? Some of those little tidbits that we had in some of the slides. And it's only just a few things that an HR department. Have you struggled with how to do a performance review with somebody who is depressed because they're going through a separation divorce? Here's how I might be able to help. So you're offering something, and all you want to do is have an initial conversation to gauge the reaction. Is there an opportunity here of somebody who's willing to give me an ear to talking about what they may be able to do? I think that where part of it is, if you walk into, this was described to me a number of years ago, if you walk into a room and you say, I just want to let you all know I have cancer, I'm going to get a flood full of empathy and heartfelt comments to me. If I walk into a room and say, just want to let you all know I'm getting separated, you kind of get the dead silence because people don't know how to react to that. Mm-hmm. And that's part of, I think, why employers don't want to step into this space, because they don't want to get marred in the home life of their staff. But if we presented that you're not going down that route, you're providing some information, you're organizing a lunch and learn, somebody else is going to do that. Getting people to go to a lunch and learn on a topic of separation, well, who necessarily wants to walk into that room? It sounds like you're announcing I'm getting separated. So you have to kind of maybe pair it up with stressful life events, and you do death and you do moving and you do those ones Linda talked about, which are not maybe as much of a taboo as separation divorce. You would think that it's more commonplace and therefore would be a more accepted topic, but I don't believe that it really is. And I mean, I'd happily hear from others who've had experience where, you start talking about that in a personal space. It's a little different if I walk into a networking function or I meet somebody and they say, oh, what did you do? Or what do you do? And I say, oh, I work with those going through separation divorce. I almost always hear, oh, I could have used you 10 years ago. I could have used you 15 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And I think we just want to shift that conversation from the headspace of what's in it for the employer, and then give them those little carrots, give them those little pieces of, well, yeah, I hate performance reviews with people who are, being disruptive with their coworkers. If I could give them something that would send them off to someone else where it would help them get through their separation divorce, as an HR department, I might be happy to do that, because I'm not recommending anybody. I'm not coaching them. I'm just a source of information.
Yeah, a few years back, the Sudbury collaborative group, we actually went to a Sherpa meeting, which was all HR people, and they totally agreed that this was a problem with their staff. And you know, depending on which high risk group they came from, because there were some that were mentioned like in the presentation, and they were pretty excited about the thought of doing that. We didn't go as far, partly because, you know, we were working with the collaborative team, and so it was up to them where we were going with this. But for sure, you know, had we gone a little further and said, you know, how can we maybe assist you with putting some sort of policies in place or some sort of assisted program or something, it could have taken root, put it that way. So I think that I think there definitely is a benefit, and I think that because of the time and the fact that staffing has never been such a problem, that there's possibly a bit more of an ear for that.
I think there's a bit more of an ear to mental wellness than maybe in past years. So, you know, you keep knocking on doors, having the same conversation until somebody opens the door and leaves it open for you to talk longer.
And I think from what you're saying, you have to be much more specific in terms of whatever issue you want to raise, because there's going to be one issue that's raised that's going to be a trigger point for anybody, whether it's in an HR department and so on. So that's very different from, you know, having a booth at a conference.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not specific. And even if you have signs or whatever the case would be, it's addressing something. And I think you're right, in today's world, after COVID and everything else, in employee retention, that's a much bigger issue than it would have been even before COVID.
For sure. And I mean, certainly, I don't know how many of you had seen the article that was circulated there, that people are, even regardless of whether there's more or not, people are more angry. People are more divisive than they have been in the past. And I would certainly say most of the people that I have talked to are finding with the clients that they've been working with that is the case. And so take that, that's not just happening with the clients you're working with at that moment, that's happening in the workplace too.
Yeah.
So, you know, like there's some really valid reasons to do this. And I think Gail had a good point in saying, you know, you may not want to say, you know, if you're going to do a lunch and learn, you know, come and hear about how to deal with separation and divorce. But I mean, you know, effective ways to live through life transitions or something along those lines. Like, everybody has stuff happen in their life. They're going to be ready to listen to something like that. And I mean, even as always, maybe being the ultimate optimist always, I think it's, you know, not a bad idea to say, you know what, if you're thinking about, you know, moving in with somebody or getting married, what about doing that agreement that could really make a difference and that sort of thing. So I think that, you know, unfortunately, we have tons to offer. We just need to make sure that we're trying to, you know, reach out to the right people, so that we can do, you know, we can do a good job with all kinds of people.
Yep, Susan?
So way back in the day, I tried to do a lunch and learn with, there's a financial planner in our office too. And so I tried to do a lunch and learn with his client base, and nobody replied. So like, there's a stigma. But, you know, they're like, I tried to tell people, you know, for your kids, just to remind them, you know, about that, all the things that you're entering into a contract. And I think people don't realize that when you're getting married, right? And so I could not get anyone to come, and which was really unfortunate, just even for, and I think part of it, I wonder, if they came, does that mean they're separating? No, it's more for information only, like to share with friends, family, you know, an acquaintance who's telling you, because people share their lives, right, with everybody. Well, lots of people do anyway, and or can, and yet I could not get anybody to come. What I
found successful is, and this was in the earlier days when I was doing more of the outreach, networking, public sort of stuff, is that holding a workshop or seminar in a library setting, so it's kind of neutral, They pre-registered with the library, so that didn't make a problem. And we had a panel of speakers. And it was moving forward or something along those lines. And we had a mortgage person, we had a real estate person, and we had a separation divorce person. So separation divorce is not the only reason you move, but if you wanted to slide into that event, you're just could be under either of those other two topics. So if you do what Linda has suggested, life transition, life events, and you have a family professional along with you, as just an example, then you can talk about some of the broader topics where you can bring this in. I agree, it's a hard sell to get people to come into a room on it if that's your sole topic, unless it's a designated, these people have been referred to this workshop from a doctor, from a particular therapist, and you're doing it more as an information session.
Gail.
Yep.
This is
Tatiana.
Mhm.
Milton Library rejected my offer about 10 times in the last 10 years to do the presentation on separation and divorce. I even reached out to my MP, Lisa Wright, raising the issue that why do we see salespeople presenting from investors group? Nothing wrong with this, but where there is pure information and no sell as such, I got rejections and they refused to provide it in writing to me. I worked with, as you know, Gail, know, actually, thank you so much for giving this idea to me when you were coaching me back in the days. I worked with Myrna Chappelle for 5 years, and several companies that could have made a decision on group benefits pushed me away with suggestions saying that we don't deal with this. We have Myrna Chappelle, or we have all these companies that vet, pick professionals. We don't deal with this at HR level. If you're talking about moms and dads shop, that's different. But how many cases would you get from them if they have 5 employees or 15 employees? So I got problem with Myrna Chappelle, and you know this, that if I meet with client, they were paying me $100 an hour, and I was signing off that I can't be retained by these clients. I went through a lot of arm wrestling when people were trying to get second or third session approved. They were saying absolutely not. And I had few moments with them when they were telling me that I give them way too much information, that what my job is in 20 minutes to give them the website address, the phone number for Law Society, that's it. No, not because how can you do it in 1 hour? Most of my sessions were going way over an hour, and I was paying $100 to do that. And you, Gail, know reporting, and you have to make yourself available. And we are talking about personal meeting, not the phone chat, as they pay you $20 an hour, which is absolutely ridiculous. It all went highway with COVID because my contract got discontinued with them. They were offering me $75 an hour. So I just said, unfortunately. So my take on it, I think it's a fantastic initiative, but maybe if we can come up with brochure or maybe good lingo and some unified way, and it comes from an academy rather than from Tatiana or Mary or John. But I was dealing with politics. We're not dealing with stigma or veneer. In my experience, I was bouncing off office politics, union politics, and all these people that made me convinced they really don't care. Believe it or not, nobody wants to take an initiative to do something good because they don't want to do a mistake or an error. They don't know how wonderful we are, and nobody wants to put their job on the line. This is my 5 cents.
Yeah, no, that's really, I think that's valuable to hear. And I would think as attractive as it might be to have a huge organization, you maybe want in between the 5 employee and the 100 or 300 or whatever employees. I do think that there is a possibility that like it would be one-on-one. It doesn't hurt to get your name out there though. But I think, yeah, I hear you, and I think that us developing something would be useful. I think that, you know, we could rejig the, and any of you that would want to have the presentation and want to tweak it for your own purposes, we'd be happy to share that with you as well. I just think that we can do some good work and make a difference, as well as, you know, help ourselves as far as getting referrals and that sort of thing. Just continually letting people know that we exist is pretty much groundbreaking, because there's just so many people that don't know.
Mhm.
You know, and I mean, the need is quite significant. So, but yeah, anybody who, like, as I said before, anybody who'd be interested in putting their 2 cents worth in, and that sort of thing, or vetting something that we come up with, I think would be helpful. So anyways, we put that out there for your thoughts.
Yeah, and it may be more, as opposed to going to the EAP provider companies, so the La Chapelle, you go to the HR department
Mhm.
in those mid-sized companies, small-sized companies, and say, you know, here's an offering. This is not me selling my services. This is a panel of people within this community. This is information that can help your staff, your employees who are going through separation divorce. And you leave it with them and you answer questions, and it's just offering a hand of help, as opposed to we need to go and jump the big bridge that says we want to be listed as one of your EAP services. Like I think that's a very long road, which has been attempted over the decade plus that I've done this work in a couple different ways, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. This is the slightly different approach, and I think if somewhere along the lines you can use your own client base as resources for introductions, I think that's helpful. And it doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be a quiet. So if you get a business owner, what other companies do they belong to? Could you come into their company and do something? I had an HR professional manager as one of my clients. I mean, that's a natural lead into the work we did as a financial divorce specialist and in mediation. She's now been to 2 different, her employment path has taken her to 2 different companies. So that's the kind of thing you want to see if you can individually get into in your various communities. I think this is, maybe as Linda has indicated, this can be a 2-pronged approach of grassroots in your own community and larger from the academy, and the academy reaching out to with a package branded from the academy where you aware of, and then I can give it to whomever I may find in my community or send it electronically. I tend to think most things are shared either via links or some sort of electronic version.
Yeah, I think that some of the advantages we do have right now with people having accepted the electronic world differently is that, you know, certainly the work is anywhere, and you can certainly put the word out in any which way it, you know, again, an employer can just facilitate that there's going to be this particular session that you can log on to at such and such a time, or that sort of thing. It's, you know, and I think Gail's point too, I mean, I definitely think you want to go delicately about, you know, this is a separation or divorce thing, because I think that may be where the library gave you problems, Tatiana. I think that there is unfortunately like some ridiculous stigma, which is pretty crazy when you think about the numbers of people that go through this. But nevertheless, it's almost as if you talk about it, it's like a disease that's going to spread or something like that. That's not what happens, of course. You know, if people were empowered with a little bit more information, maybe they could avoid some of the pitfalls that they go through with that.
Yeah, it's funny the assumptions people make when you talk about the work you do. I remember I was making a donation check. I had it written out, I had it in the envelope. I hadn't put a stamp on it, but I had sealed it. And I got an email back that no, they would not take my money because I promoted separation and divorce. It's like, okay, rip up that. I guess I am not donating to your organization because I don't do that. People are going to separate and divorce no matter what walk of life they come from or through.
Mhm.
They can go the legal route and end up in court if they can use a different method. And I belong in the category of different method. But
Yeah,
it's
fascinating. Fascinating. When you think about it, it's like, well, nobody should be a doctor because I mean, obviously, if you go to a doctor, you're going to get sick, right? I mean, it's just a crazy way of thinking, but nevertheless, I guess some of the things we've witnessed over the last couple of years have shown how illogical human beings are.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry, I was going to say, anyone else have and situations experience to share on where they've had success getting something out to the larger community or a particular population group, or where you haven't had success, like Tatiana was saying, she was, knocking on the door multiple times, but they just weren't answering.
Well, okay.